Welcome to the Tinley Talks podcast, where we dive into the common legal issues facing today's community associations. Whether you're a manager, board member, or homeowner, you're sure to pick up on some nuggets of advice to help you build a successful community in this ever-evolving and changing world.
Hello and welcome to Tinley Talks. I'm Ramona Acosta.
And I'm Steve Tinley.
And today we'll be discussing how to choose the right management company for your association with Colette Marcelle of First Service Residential. Colette brings over a decade of experience in the property management industry, in which she excels in cultivating lasting associate, client, and vendor relationships. As a community manager, Colette's strengths include a vast knowledge of building maintenance and contract negotiations. She specializes in project management and streamlining operations. She's taken her property management skills and shifted into a new role, focusing on the training and development of new community managers, as well as continuing education of experienced managers. Colette's knowledge of community management training and development has given her the ability to seek out prime talent and opportunities across the industry. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, excited you're here. Thank you.
So today we kind of want to talk about community associations and management companies and finding the right fit, right? Because I think sometimes associations think that they need all the bells and whistles, and maybe they don't. Maybe they only need financial services. Maybe they don't need a large management company. Maybe a small one is better, or vice versa. So, Steve, I kind of wanted to talk to you about this first, or start with you, because one of the things that we do as a firm is help associations find new management. And sometimes it's not necessarily an issue of the management company is not doing this or is not doing that. It's more of a fit type of situation, correct?
Yeah, it's a fit with the particular account manager that might be working with that community, and what the account manager's situation is. And a lot of times, we find with these board members is that, and I'm sure you could understand this, Colette, their expectation as to what should be included and what management is there to do sometimes isn't a realistic expectation, especially those that have never served on a HOA board before. So when we have a client come to us and they say, hey, we're having an issue with our management company, we want to find a new one of the things that we first do is say, okay, wait a second, is it the management company or is it the particular manager, or what are the kind of the nature of the concerns that you have, and are the expectations or are your concerns realistic? Like what's the real issue? So when you have a client that approaches you that says, hey, Colette, we're working with this account manager, we appreciate what your company does, but we're having an issue with this account manager, where do you look at to kind of understand what the client's desires are and what might be the best way to salvage the relationship?
Well, I always joke that board members, they want Rolls-Royce service with a little Pinto budget.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they want, the used car, but they want this ritzy, glamorous, service. And so most of the time it's mostly educating the boards on what's included in their contracts and what the service expectation is. So sometimes, it is the manager that they're not fulfilling, the duties that they're supposed to do. But most of the time, it's how we are going to partnership with the board of directors, because that's what it comes down to, right? They pay us for a service, and we just need to meet those expectations. So if you have unrealistic expectations, we need to mediate and find a center ground.
What do you find is like a common issue that boards are surprised, especially new board members, when they say, management company doesn't do this, or why don't they do this? Is there any one particular issue that pops out to you?
Yeah, they don't understand what a portfolio manager is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's like Education 101. Portfolio manager, they have numerous accounts that they manage, and they're not just dedicated to you. So we have to explain that to them, and then also empower the managers to, tell that to the board member delicately, while still providing excellent service. So, it's give or take. You can't tell them like, oh, hey, you don't pay us for that, because,
No,
you want them to feel like they're your only client,
Mm-hmm.
but while balancing that with the knowledge that they're not your only client, right? And so, I used to tell the managers that I worked with, you have to bill them for that. So many of the managers that I worked with, they didn't want to bill overtime if they had a 2-hour meeting in their contract and they were consistently having 3-hour meetings. And I'm like, well, you have to bill them for that. When you get to that hour and a half mark, you have to say, okay, guys, we're coming up on we have a half an hour left. We're going to have to start billing. You have to train them to understand that you have responsibilities. And I think once once you start billing them and once you start reminding them that, hey, we only have 2 walks a month, I'm happy to come out a third time, but I'm going to have to bill you for that. I'm happy to do this extra service for you, but in accordance with the contract, I'm going to have to bill you for that, right? There's a diplomatic and a professional way to say that, but to kind of train them to remember that you're not at their beck and call. You're not an on-site manager. You're not a general manager. You're portfolio, and you have other responsibilities and other things that you have to deal with during the day.
I always encourage managers to not make it transactional, because when it's transactional, that's when they see you as just their robot. I tell you to do this, you need to do it right now because I said it. But if you create that relationship, have open lines of communication, it's a lot easier to have that conversation with, happy to take on that extra work, but we're going to have to bill you for it. And then that's when, possibly your contract could be renegotiated so you can have a dedicated manager or possibly a general manager, to find the needs of what the association truly needs.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important because, as you said, sometimes they want that Disneyland service, they want that Rolls-Royce service. And as a management company, we're happy to give them as much service as they want, but they also have to be willing to pay for that as well. And it might not be in their budget. Their assessments might not be able to support that, and that's okay, but then we have to lower expectations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or just set them appropriately, right? So that a dedicated manager, help us understand, okay, if a community says, listen, the way that we work and I think we're going to be best, we need a dedicated manager. What's that type of account typically produce in management fees? I mean, that's,
Well, I mean, if you're thinking about manager salary, right? I mean, if you're talking about a dedicated manager, right, in a portfolio situation, typically it's a 3-to-1 ratio or something similar to that, right, of associations to manager salary. So because those associations have to support a manager salary. If you have a dedicated manager to an association, that one association has to support that salary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plus all the support staff, right? Because it's AR and escrow and customer service and the assistants. It's not just the dedicated manager.
So it's a 3x multiple. Okay.
Right.
I get that. So help us understand, right? So full service management contract.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a board member of a plan development. We're going to be working with one of your portfolio managers, and you're going to give us a full service management contract. Top level, what does that mean for us? What's the aspect of what you handle for us under a full service agreement?
Well, it depends what they pay for. So you said portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So boards have the option of being kind of picky, right? Especially if you're a new client, you can be very specific on your wants. So you could have requirements for your manager. So you'd want someone that's been in the industry for a certain amount of years, someone with experience doing phasing. There's so many different criteria for managers.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when you're portfolio, you can't be picky because portfolio is kind of the revolving door until you get that right fit. And one of my board members always joked, like when I came on the account, he was like, oh, you're good. We're not going to have you for that long. You're going to get promoted. Yeah. And when I got promoted, that was like the running joke. And he's like, we knew you wouldn't last long because we only pay a certain amount of money. And, the good ones always go fast. The bad ones get fired. So it's really hard to say when your portfolio what you're going to get from the manager because it's not really guaranteed. In the management company, I don't think they can guarantee like, oh yeah, you're going to get this person for 2 years because, they can come and go. It's really hard.
So what you're saying is you've got these schedule of services that are going to be backed by the company, right? You're going to provide these resources, but your actual day-to-day customer service experience with your designated account manager, that could vary depending upon the account manager that you have. And what I think you said was insightful. You kind of made a joke of it, but you said, portfolio manager is kind of like a revolving door. I think that's one thing that, I don't know, maybe we communicated enough to our clients, but if you're operating with this budget and you have a portfolio manager, it's actually an expectation that your account manager is going to change potentially a number of times. And that's not something that you should be surprised when it ultimately happens because you're paying for a service that puts you in that pool where there's going to be people that are turning over depending upon performance. Rock stars like you are going to get promoted up through the company. You might have a different, more junior account manager, and hopefully he or she will be able to do the job and fill big shoes that were left behind, right? But that's an important thing. I think we need to kind of emphasize to our clients, if you're at this level, it's unrealistic to expect that you're going to have a senior account manager on your account in perpetuity, right? Because you're not paying for that level of experience, right?
Yeah, I think the more successful management companies, I think they've learned the team approach, because you're right, portfolio management is a revolving door, and it's really the first level when you enter this industry. You typically start out as a portfolio manager, and then you work your way up and end up on an onsite, or you end up supervising others, and you grow within your organization. But you typically ground level is portfolio management, right? So I think the more successful management companies have relied on the team approach to say, okay, well, yes, we have our frontline manager, but that manager has a director of community management, and that director has a regional manager, and that regional manager has another executive above them, and we meet on a regular basis, and we have 2 or 3 eyes that are looking at this association at any given time.
You touched on a good point too. You shouldn't just only rely on your community manager, right? So I think the most successful associations have an actual team of people. Mm-hmm. So having that open line of communication with your manager supervisor, and not just telling them the bad things, but just like keeping them in the loop of things that are going on, having that support team. So if your manager does leave, there's so many people to fill in those gaps, and you're not going to see that stopping your service.
Yeah, and one of the things that we joke about as a law firm is, when we go out and we do an interview, everyone thinks that they're getting Steve, because Steve is the one who goes on the interview. And I see the same thing with association management. More and more associations are asking to interview the manager. They want to know who it is that they're actually going to work with. And that's great for the first year, but at some point that person is going to move on, and so you can't just interview that frontline manager. You've got to find out who's their direct report, who's their supervisor, and who's that person's supervisor, because those are typically where the constants are. When you start getting to that director and regional manager level, that's where you start seeing some constants within the management company, because at that point those people have established a relationship with their employer, with their management company. They have found their home, and they're typically not going anywhere. They're probably going to stay there until they retire, or until they find...
They retire.
Yeah, they retire. I was going to say until they find a really good opportunity, but most of the time they just stay and retire.
All right, so let's break this down a little bit, because I want to revisit the idea of full service management, right? And I can kind of understand there's 3 buckets, right? You've got like the property management / maintenance side of it, administrative back end, those types of services, as well as financial related services and financial management. Can you give us kind of a top level view of that full service? What do you do from the standpoint of property maintenance management, administrative, and financial management? Kind of give us the big picture of what the management contract is going to provide.
You're mostly the conductor, right? I mean,
yeah.
You're the one who's doing the plug and play with the appropriate vendor with the appropriate need, right? Many associations and many boards, they have this expectation that, well, the manager should have caught that. The manager should be overseeing that, whether it's a construction job or whether it's the financial statements. And I think one of the things, when we start out with a new association with a new board is, what is the manager's role? Right? I mean, I think it's easy to say, okay, we're going to do so many walkthroughs, and we're going to do so many board meetings, and we're going to take your minutes, and we're going to go get proposals and things like that. But I think the expectation is, well, I had a contractor on site, and before you paid the bill, Colette, you were supposed to go out and walk the property, and you were supposed to inspect their work and recognize that it wasn't correct before you paid the invoice.
Yeah, I'm not the expert. Yeah, that's a big struggle. So for property maintenance, the expectation is that, you're fulfilling your contract by doing those site visits and doing the day-to-day business of the association. Like Ramona said, you're the conductor. So I think boards fail to realize this too, is managers don't have the power. They work on behalf of the board of directors, and it's a partnership. So I say this a lot, but clear communication of expectations and what is your responsibility, I think, is crucial, because a lot of the times the board of directors, they don't have a clear understanding of what they truly want, right? Because, there's concrete that's lifted, it's a hazard. The manager goes, oh man, I just got to get this done. Someone might trip and fall. Then at the board meeting, the board's like, oh, this was $1,500 for that? I could have got like Joe Schmo down the street to get it.
Yeah.
And it's like finding those expectations and what you're able to do, I would guess. And then the admin side, again, the partnership with the board to make sure that the minutes are recorded, that your insurance is taken care of, all of those like civil code requirements. Again, the manager's not solely responsible for that. So they're that conductor, and they're delegating those tasks to maybe third party or internal teams, depending on how large your management company is. And same for financial services, that's a separate team. They review the documents before they present it to the board, but there's so many things that are not in their realm, like they are not debt collectors. So, they know the general, we have to get a lien. They know what it's about, but do they know like all the tight details? Not necessarily, but that's when you bring in like the experts to go, talk to the board on the behalf.
Yeah.
I think many boards have this assumption that managers are experts in everything, and they're not. They have a little bit of knowledge, just enough knowledge to make them dangerous in every little thing, and that's why they have experts. And so it's getting the board to realize that you might have to pay a little bit extra for your attorney, or you might have to have your insurance agent come to a meeting, or, you might have to have your collection company come to a meeting, because I know a little bit of information, but I'm not able to answer all of the questions that you have. And it's not because I'm deficient as a manager. It's because my expertise is in management. It's not in debt collection.
Yeah. I think it's important communicating that with the clients too. I see not enough managers, they feel embarrassed by saying, well, I don't have the answers to that, or I don't know, or let me get back to you, when really they can say, actually, that, I'm here to compile the information and kind of lead you to it, but no, there's an expert either internally within our company or a third party that works with your association, and they're the ones that are supposed to be kind of quarterbacking this information or this type of guidance for you. And I just, for the life of me, I don't understand. Maybe just more junior managers, they're afraid to tell clients something that
they're so scared to say no.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say no, but have that solution. So be solution-based. I don't know the answer to that. I've told you that twice today.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know the answer, but I can get someone, you want your next guest, I can get someone that can have all those answers for you.
Or I don't know the answer to that, and honestly, I'm not supposed to know the answer to that, right? What's in your community's best interest is that answer needs to be provided to you by an expert that you've retained. I'm here to help facilitate that relationship and make sure that you guys have that open line of communication, right, to be that conductor, but I as a manager am not doing your community or you as a board any service by pretending like I know everything or that I have a license.
That's a problem too. There's some managers that they act like they know everything and, oh yeah, I got it, it's good, and then you see like it crumble.
Yeah, no, we get that a lot of times too. Sometimes a manager will step in and be like, oh my gosh, I spoke out of turn, I did this thing, I was just kind of going through it, and now the client's in a bad position and I'm in a bad position here, help, and we do what we can. But sometimes, especially newer managers, those mistakes are going to happen. Don't beat yourself up about it, but learn from them. Understand that, listen, there's, everybody's got a job to fill, and by you pretending like you're, the champion of everything, like I'm not a litigator, for example, right? I don't do any litigation work whatsoever. If I have a client come to me, hey, Steve, we're going to do this, what I tell them is that I'm not going to do it. One of our rock star litigators is going to do it, right? Because I don't do that work. That's not my scope. That's not what you're here for. But what I will do is provide you with the best possible person I can that specializes in that, and they'll be able to do that. And I think there's a lesson that managers can learn from that, right? That's what your role is supposed to be.
Yes.
I often joke sometimes, clients, they say, oh, the board member, we don't know, and we're afraid to face the community because we don't know all the particular things. We're doing a town hall meeting. I said, listen, if I'm a homeowner, the last thing I want is a board president that gets up there and says, I know everything about everything, and don't worry, I have it all under control, because that's not the case. And why is this person pretending, right? Instead, come to them, approach it from a standpoint of humility. Listen, there's things that we know, we have a good grasp on, there's things that are technical and we don't. So what we've done is brought in the people who are in the best position to do that. And I think managers can learn a lot from approaching the client that way. At least in my experience, the client generates some respect on their end and say, okay, I understand it. Thank you for being candid with me, right?
Like what you hear so far? Make sure to subscribe to the Tinley Talks podcast at tinleylaw.com and never miss an episode. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you hit on before we even started, Colette, was the type of manager that an association might want. And there's a business partner friend of mine who long time ago said, I find that there are two types of managers. And he said there's the executive assistant type manager who goes to the board meeting and takes notes and takes the minutes and doesn't really say anything. And then there's that COO type manager that is that partner with the board, as you mentioned earlier, who is participating in the meeting, who's giving guidance, who's making recommendations. And when we talk about full service management, we talk about setting expectations. I think that's one of those things that has to be discussed at that contract negotiation, because sometimes you find a very intelligent, very astute board that is perfectly content with that executive assistant, and you have those other boards that they need that COO and they got the assistant, and it's not a right fit. So, again, going back to talking about expectations and roles and the negotiation process, I think that's something that boards have to be very vocal about when they're looking for a management company. What type of manager are they looking for?
How active is your board in managing this association? Are you not very active and you want a manager that's going to take on more of it? Or are you very active and you want a manager that's more of a taskmaster, kind of an assistant type of role? Well, let me flip it this way, Colette. So let's say you've got a community that reaches out to your company, hey, for service, we would like you to provide us with a proposal for full service management for our association. What are the questions that you ask them?
I feel like they need to reflect on what is their true, what are their wants? Do you want someone that's going to go on your property walk and point out every flaw and create an action plan to make your community the best community? Or are you very frugal, and if they see that something's chipped, if the building's not falling down, we're going to keep it like that and move on, There's so many different types of personalities within boards, and I think you could probably attest to this, that you need to have your goals and your wish list, because not every management company can provide the same level of service that First Service can, with having the manpower to do extra things because we have such broad resources, versus the mom and pop, where if a homeowner calls, they have the time to be on the phone with them for 15-20 minutes listening about the dog when they're just trying to pay their bill,
And that's fine, because different communities are going to require a different level of service. And you mentioned it earlier, I think that boards need to have a certain level of self-reflection before they start this process, because I think sometimes they come into this is, I don't mean this to sound derogatory, but they come in kind of on their best behavior.
Oh, yeah.
And not always being
transparent.
Yeah, not always vocalizing the needs of the community. And you could have a 30-unit community that requires an extensive number of hours each month because of how much deferred maintenance and how much is in your reserves and the type of homeowners that are in your community, and and just the location of your community, versus you could have a 300-unit association that requires very little attention, right? And I think that it's not always about, you called it Rolls Royce and Pinto.
I like your Disneyland better, though.
I know. I say Disneyland and Walmart. It's a Disney,
No, it's Disneyland and then Scandia.
But it's there is that budgetary issue, but I also find that you have to, as the board, you have to be honest in terms of how much time your association is actually going to require each month. And it's not just a 2-hour board meeting and 2 walkthroughs per month. It's how many phone calls do you expect your homeowners to make, and how much deferred maintenance is on the community, and how much time are we going to actually have to spend dealing with vendors and water leaks and roof leaks and and all of those issues. So you have to be honest about that. You have to be upfront about that in the beginning. And sometimes I think that boards can be in denial. And Steve, you talk about this a lot, about associations that are proud of themselves for not raising their assessments for years or decades.
That's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And they do the same thing, I think, with management agreements. And they say, we've changed management every couple of years because we've kept our budget down so that we could keep our assessments low.
Jeez Louise.
And they're not really recognizing the number of hours that's going into that management each month.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting way of thinking about it too, because with this program, I think board members out there probably gain the most from this information. You're switching a management company. not necessarily why, but what do you hope to achieve with the new management company, right? What is it? Better service. Well, what does that mean, right? Does it mean more available service? Does it mean a broader service offering? Does it mean somebody who's more dedicated to you, that you'll be able to have more meetings each month? Like, what is the ultimate objective that you're trying to obtain, right, in switching management companies?
I've experienced that last year during COVID. We transitioned a community, and I got it. And they said it would be easy. It was relatively easy. And I was just doing my job, answering emails, answering phone calls. And the number one thing people told me, I could still go to that community today, and they're like, "Oh my God, Colette, you are so amazing." And I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "You answered the phone. You called me back."
Yeah.
And it's just those little service things. It sounds silly, but returning phone calls, answering emails, if you don't have the answer, communicating that to them, I think a lot of people or board members, they want to transition because they're not getting their way or something went wrong. And so really dig deep and say what is truly the problem? Your manager is advising you not to do something that you shouldn't be doing. And so, you're having a little temper tantrum and you want to switch management companies? Or are they really lacking that service, but are you still giving, the executives of that management company the feedback hey, we have this manager and they're not answering emails, they're not answering phone calls. Are you giving them the opportunity to fix it? Because switching management companies is so stressful. It's stressful for the homeowners, it's stressful for the managers, all the back end work that has to happen when you are transferring information. It's a learning curve. And a lot of times the people that are affected the most, I think, are the homeowners. And so I believe, as a board of directors, you're supposed to care about the community and all the homeowners in the association. So instead of being so quick to jump ship, try to find that solution. Sometimes, honestly, there's some companies out there, we don't know how they're still in business because they don't answer the phone calls and they don't answer the emails. I've experienced it personally. When you're looking for the new company, just really see what their core values are, what they stand for, their integrity. That's a lot nowadays with all the fraud that's going on. And just making sure it fits your community and what your expectations are. Because yes, there's someone that has all the bells and whistles. They can get you a fancy website, they have really fancy business cards. But if they're not going to do their basic job duty, what does that do to you?
Are they actually going to be able to deliver on the promises they made during the fancy presentation and pitch meeting? Right?
My favorite ones is when I hear that we didn't get it, and then they come back the next year, and it's oh, it didn't work out for you. Shucks.
Yeah.
Or they leave. They leave and then they come back a couple years later because, they found another management company for a lower monthly fee, but they got what they paid for as well. So sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. How often does First Service go over the management contract with the boards? Because I know for us on the legal side, we try to encourage a board member orientation with each annual meeting because you have new homeowners who are getting on the board who don't know Davis Sterling, who don't know their governing documents, and so we try to give them kind of a legal 101. My personal opinion, I think it would be beneficial for the new board members to know the management agreement as well. I think sometimes you get new homeowners on the board and they don't know what the manager is supposed to do. They don't know what the expectation is, what you can approve on your own, what you can't, how often you should be on site, and so forth. They have absolutely no clue. And sometimes you see these contracts that are 5 years, 6 years old, and new board has never seen it.
I don't know if that's done on the regular. In my experience, my boards have all been on the board for 10 plus years, most of them, and then we educate the new ones, as it comes on with your board member orientation. Use that quite frequently. It's great, by the way. I think a lot of management companies, and I'm not speaking for First Service, but just in general, I think they're scared of that because, contracts are very black and white, and sometimes you do things outside your contract. And you kind of been getting away with it, like you said before, managers not billing on items that they should be. And it's scary for any third-party vendor to go in and present their contract to a board of directors, because that gives them the opportunity to tear it apart. You know? And so I don't think it's like they're hiding it. I mean, at my level, that's not like a conversation that I had.
Right.
It was more of like a regional director. If someone had a concern, then they would reach out and speak to them directly on it. That was above my pay grade, so to say. But I think it is beneficial because, you know, you do it with your landscape maintenance, you do it with every other vendor. So you should do it with your management company. But in my experience, I never had the need to, because I just built great relationships with them.
Yeah, you know, and
they felt secure.
Yeah, and that's awesome, and I wish more managers and boards did that. You know, my last management company that I was at, I had most of my clients for about 5 years, but some of the other management companies that I was at, you're right, portfolio was a revolving door. I stayed, but you know, my clients were rotating because a lot of management companies, they're doing a mix of, they want a portfolio manager to have a mix of condominiums and plan developments, a mix of monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly meetings, so that nobody is overwhelmed. And managers move around, which means portfolios move around, and then suddenly you have a manager with all condominiums, and so you have to shuffle that. So, you know, you could constantly be changing your portfolio just because of the makeup of the organization. I find that boards, back to your point, Colette, you know, portfolio management is a revolving door, and that's one of the complaints that we hear a lot from our clients is we've had 6 managers in the last year and a half or in the last 2 years. And I think it goes back to, finding that right fit between manager and boards. Managers have to get along with 30 different board members, right? Because you have a 5-member board and you have a portfolio and they all have different personalities. And then trying to have that unicorn mix of a portfolio so that you don't burn that manager out. And so that means that you're going to be moving around a lot. And I think for boards that's very frustrating. As soon as they find somebody who is trained on their association, who works with them the way that they would like somebody to work with them, that person moves on, and it can be frustrating.
They just need to be nice to that manager then. I told my board members that, I'm like, you guys are great, you treat me with respect, but I have 3 other clients that, you know, they tear my head off every day, and they're like, why? Like, I don't understand. And I'm like, I don't either. It's just their personality. So if you have a manager you like, just be nice to them. You know? Kindness goes a long way. Maybe they'll stick around.
Yeah, we hear that too. We hear, you know, I think we have a manager, we really like our manager, we really like our management company, but we think that our manager is overloaded. And we haven't been able to resolve that situation. And it might not be that the management company might have every intention to resolve that situation and may not have the capacity to do so in this moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if that's the case, I would hope that, you know, whoever the supervisor or, you know, the executive team of the management company just present that honestly to the client, right? I always get concerned when people are wanting to hide the ball rather than just, you know, coming out with what the information is. So, yeah, I mean, you know, board members that are out there that have either like their manager, have concerns, or don't like their manager and have concerns, it's certainly worth it. And I think you made a really strong point when we were talking about just from the perspective of what is the experience going to be for your membership if you just change management companies, right? It's an incredibly disruptive thing. So it's worth the time to say, approaching the company, hey, these are the challenges that we're having, these are the concerns. Can we get a meeting? Let's help us out. If our expectations are incorrect, we need to understand that. If our expectations are correct and you're not performing, we need to understand what you're going to do about it. Because we want to try to salvage this relationship, because it's difficult to kind of unplug a management company and plug a new one in. I had a client last year, it was through the COVID situation, and they had an old management contract that allowed them to terminate at any time with 30 days notice. And they wanted to give the term notice. It was like after Thanksgiving. I said, okay, so wait a second, you want a 30-day management transition during the holidays. Listen, legally, yeah, you might have the ability to do that, but understanding practically, is that the best decision to make for your membership? What's your membership's experience going to be? Don't you owe it to your membership to say, hey, maybe we can have a least disruptive path by salvaging this relationship? And you can't do that if you're a board member and you're afraid to talk about the concerns. You just want to go, through the back door and say, hey, let's just find a new management company, right? Sometimes that's not the best situation.
So as a management company, as a manager, What do you expect from a client, from the board?
I expect respect, first of all. It's hard in business sometimes when you pay for a service. You think you're entitled to the world. And, you are, but I'm still a human. So treat me with the respect that I give you. I think that's like the first thing. And then open communication. Mm-hmm. I am not a mind reader. I'm really good at reading vibes, but I can't read your mind. So if something is wrong, you need to express that, again, in a respectful manner. And 3, just understand, again, that we're human, and so things take time. So be understanding that everything can't happen immediately. And I think you guys probably know this too, like someone wants to start a project, they need a contract drafted. It takes time to go through things and make sure that it's done the right way. So just to have patience and know that we are working together as a partnership, and all your tasks will get done, but sometimes you can't do 3 major capital projects at one time. It's going to take time. We need to plan this out so it can be done right the first time and not make mistakes. So respect, communication, and then maybe compassion, understanding.
Yeah.
We're humans, patience. Yeah,
I think board members don't get paid. We talk about that a lot. They're volunteers. It's a thankless job. They don't get paid. For managers, it's a thankless job, but we do get paid.
Not enough.
And so I think that sometimes there's this justification that, well, I'm paying the service, I'm paying for this fee. And I think that we have to remember that, managers are professionals and that this is their job, this is their 8 to 5. On a board meeting night, it could be an 8 to 10. So just recognize that this is their day job, and that they have families to go home to, and their evenings need to be their evenings, and their weekends need to be their weekends. And we have an emergency on-call service, but that's what it's for. It's for emergencies. And so just try to be kind to the manager, try to be respectful, thank them for their time and their service. And if there is an issue, because they're human, they're gonna have issues, things are gonna come up, talk to the manager about it. And if it doesn't get resolved, then again, there's a team behind them. And if you need a new manager, if you need a manager change, there's nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
Yeah. Well, Colette, you just got your CMCA certification.
I did. Certified
Manager of Community Associations from CAI.
Fancy title.
I know, right? You're official now.
I'm officially official.
Some management companies are involved with CAI and CACM. Others are not. Some promote certifications. Others don't. From a management perspective, and somebody who just got her certification, if you were advising boards, how important is that? Should they be looking for someone with alphabet soup, or do you think that's based on the type and size of community? What do you think about that?
Based on the type and size. So if you are an association that basically runs yourself, you just manage like a slope, some mailboxes, that's it. You have a quarterly meeting. You don't need someone with alphabet soup. You could go to that small management company that just, does your billing. But if you are project heavy, or, you have, like, you're against like a fuel mod and you have fire issues, having someone with that experience and the network that it provides, being part of CAI, I think is great, because you have so many resources available to you. So you have the education, you also have the networking with other experts, and then you also have the continued education with like the symposiums and
the luncheons and all that, right? Yeah. Because if you have a certification, you have to get continued education credits to maintain those certifications. So they're always up on new things. And I like what you said about networking, because I don't care how long you've been in this industry, something is going to come up that you've never had to deal with before. It just happened to Steve today. Yeah. So, having that network, having someone that you can call to help you out is very beneficial. One of the things that I like about this industry is that it's friendly competition. So even though, we're 2 different management companies, I can call you and I say, hey, Colette, I have this project. I've never had to deal with it before. Do you know of anybody? Right? I mean, we all help each other out. And I think that's that CAI and CACM network is not necessarily that these vendors are vetted by the trade organizations per se, but we get to know them and we get to know our colleagues, and we have resources.
And I think it's also great for board members too, for them to interact as well. They can go to the luncheons, they can get the newsletters, and they can also take the education courses too. And I think that helps them become well-rounded, because a lot of the times, like we were saying before, you just see like, oh, I need a task done, but you don't know all the back work that goes into it to like get the task done. So I think being exposed as well to the industry and to, you know, other board members and interacting with them will help develop them to be, you know, good leaders of their communities.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I always like, you know, a certified manager. I mean, to me at least, it shows that, okay, this individual is taking their career seriously, right? They're going to invest and do this. I mean, you could be a fantastic manager, manage associations for decades, but if you never got your certification, the question is, okay, well,
why not?
Why not? You know, why not take that extra step? And then obviously, you know, participating in all these things and building your network is great. I mean, we as attorneys, I mean, we're blessed to be in this industry. We're all friendly with each other, because you never know, you might end up working together. We've got several attorneys in our firm now that were at competing law firms, you know, at one point. So it's nice, and I'm sure it's the same thing management companies, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
You joke around, you don't like this one person, you switch companies, and they're like right there.
Oh, yeah, it's happened to me before. We had a client say, oh gosh, we left that management company because our manager was so awful. We went to this new management company, and then within 6 months, the manager from the old company is actually assigned to their account for the new company. I mean, you never know. And a lot of board members, they don't understand that. And I don't know, for what it's worth, maybe we need to rack our brains to kind of give them a bigger peek behind the industry as a whole, because it's community management, it's not property management, right? These aren't rental properties, it's not property management, it's a totally different ballgame. And I think a lot of board members don't really understand the nuances of that, nor do community managers when they first enter this field, right? That have an experience in property management. They don't understand, what is community management like, what is this industry like?
Wild ride.
It absolutely is, especially through the COVID period.
I don't think I'll ever leave though.
No, I know I won't. It's one of those things that most of us fall into it. I don't know anybody who chose this as a career, but I think everybody that I know fell into it and then never left.
It's fun.
It's a challenge. If you like challenges, you're gonna have a new challenge every day.
Yeah, and comedy.
Yeah.
You know, some cocktail party stories of crazy homeowners or crazy board members, right? Sometimes those are always fun to share.
You'll never be bored.
Today's episode is brought to you by Altera Assessment Recovery. Altera provides comprehensive attorney-supervised assessment collection services to community associations throughout California. Trust us with your collection needs. We'll get the job done right, and as quickly and efficiently as possible. Altera Assessment Recovery. We're the collection team you've been looking for.
Steve, as an attorney representing our HOA clients, when do they need to get legal counsel involved? Because some of our clients pick up the phone and say, hey, we're thinking about changing management. And some call us after they've already done the interview and they're ready to sign the contract, or they signed it and then they decided, oh, we should have legal review it. I mean, from your standpoint, when is the ideal time to call and get us involved?
Well, I mean, on the theme of partnership, a lot of times as attorneys, we're more and more treated like commodity products, right? We're kind of kept at arm's length, and we're there on a transactional thing. Oh, we have to call the attorney for this, rather than understanding. We've got relationships. I mean, we've been in this industry for decades. We've got relationships with everybody, and if you're having an issue with your management, as counselors, right, that's what we're here, is to provide counsel to your association. I mean, I can give you the technicalities of how your contract operates, but big picture, what are the issues, right? What's your goal? Our goal is to, we're having these constant issues with management, or really like, to have this type of a service offering, or our account manager. Okay, well, let's talk about that, because, we, might have direct lines of communications with the senior management team at the company, and maybe there's, something that's gone haywire that's a quick fix, or maybe you just need an account manager change, or maybe it's just, hey, why don't you, brand new board, they have no idea what's going on. I think it's good for you guys to talk with them, to have an understanding about what the contract entails and what it doesn't entail. I mean, I wouldn't be hesitant to have that conversation. So to answer your question, Ramona, I mean, if there's an issue with any vendor, right, we'd love to be part of the process in order to be able to give them guidance. If the relationship, can't be salvaged, and you're entertaining, potential management companies, once you find the one that's a good fit, at that point, we'll review the contract. And some clients think, okay, review the contract, let us know, what do you think about the price? We don't review price and payment terms. We don't review what's in your Schedule A, additional services, things along those lines, because we think it's just, it's not something that we have the expertise. That's not really our job either. We look to provisions in the contract to protect our client, which is the association, in the event that something goes wrong with the relationship, right? If you need to get out of the contract, how do we do that? Right? Are you properly insured and protected and indemnified in case something goes sideways? That's the type of stuff that we look at. We don't negotiate price or specific terms or things like that, nor do I think it's appropriate for counsel necessarily to do that. So to answer your question, Ramona, yeah, if there's an issue with the relationship, give us a heads up. We might be able to fix it for you pretty quickly. If not, and you decide to move on to a management company, before you sign that contract, let us take a look at it. A lot of times we see clients that just sign contracts without us seeing it, and then we find out that, you're stuck with these unfortunate provisions, and they're going to burn you one way or another. But
well, and I like the ones that call us and say, I'm not ready for your involvement yet, but can you give us some recommendations? Can you give us some referrals? Go into your legal counsel, go into your landscaper, because they think sometimes our boards are. There's so many management companies out there, and they're Googling it, and you're getting, this plethora of different management companies, and you're looking at your websites, and, you might be involved with CAI, you might be familiar with some of them. Most of our boards are not. So how are you whittling down that list, and how are you figuring out which is going to be the right fit for you without doing 100 interviews? So you're a board, you have a bunch of vendors that you're working with, call them up. These are the issues that we're having. This is the kind of management company that we're looking for. Do you have any recommendations for me? Because we all work with all of the management companies that are out there. I'm happy to give you a referral, right?
Yeah. And we're motivated by just whoever performs. Mm-hmm. I mean, for us, it's not, it doesn't matter. Just I know that, okay, if I give a client 3 names, contact 1, those people are not going to waste the client's time. And 2, okay, if you do get selected, you're not going to make me look bad because you're actually going to be able to perform. I mean, really, that's my only motivation, which is why I try to call, okay, what are your issues? Let me help understand what's going on, because I'm motivated to make sure that whatever the solution is, it actually works. So if we refer a management company that doesn't end up working out, then, oh my gosh, why did that happen, right? We want to be able to avoid that. But yeah, I mean, board members out there are thinking about it. Yeah, you've got all these different vendors that you work with. We all know each other in the industry. I mean, it never hurts to say, hey, you give us some referrals. What's the situation? One time I had a board member call up. Oh man, we called we looked online at the 3 companies that you gave us, but all of them had really terrible Yelp reviews.
Of course they did.
And I'm like, find one that has great Yelp reviews. Let me know about it, because who's reviewing them? Yeah, people are upset about it. We laugh all the time, because sometimes we'll have a client say, "What's up with your Yelp reviews?" And they're homeowners that we've actually had to sue, right? That have gone on there and reviewing our law firm, calling us crooks and and cheats and all that good stuff. So a lot of times too, board members don't understand that. Well, why would we contact that company? You're saying they're fantastic, but they've got a 1-star rating. Well,
At least they got 1 star.
They're winning there at that point, right? They got that 1 star. So definitely reach out and understand there's a broader context. This isn't property management, it's community management. You have to know the bigger picture before you start diving in.
Awesome. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. We'd also like to thank Colette Marcelle for your time and expertise. Make sure to visit our website at tinleylaw.com if you haven't already, where we break down this episode, and then stay tuned for our next one.
To share or subscribe to the Tinley Talks podcast, visit us at tinleylaw.com. There you can find links to everything discussed in this episode, locate helpful resources, check out other episodes, and submit questions for future topics. And be sure to tune in next month for our next episode. As always, the views and opinions expressed by the podcast, its presenters and guests, do not constitute legal advice. For more information on the topics discussed in today's podcast, please consult with your association's legal counsel. This is Tinley Talks, presented by Tinley Law Group. Your community, your counsel.